Noah, if you had to describe the West to somebody, how do you describe that?
I would describe the West as directions: north, south, east, and then west.
Mark, how do you define the West?
Well, the West can be defined in relative terms. It's west to a person east of west, and it's east to a person east of west.
Where is west compared to east?
Left.
Nancy, how do you define the West?
Well, as a history major, the western United States used to be Pennsylvania and Ohio when I was studying early American history.
Let's see, how do I define the West? Usually cowboys are involved.
I define the West by thinking about Little House on the Prairie and Laura Ingalls Wilder and her family crossing the prairie, Wisconsin, Minnesota.
And there's the Wild West.
Where's the Wild West?
Couldn't tell you that.
Is it in Wisconsin?
Sure.
Is it in Oregon?
That too.
Is it in Iowa?
It's all over. It's the West. It's north, south, east, west.
Anything that's left of east.
Okay, Roger, how do you define the West?
Well, my first reaction is I grew up in the Midwest, and I think of the western states. I think of California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Nevada, all that. I'm going to describe it historically. The meaning of the West, 18th century, the West. The West increased in meaning or increased in territory in the 18th century due to the Louisiana Purchase. Up until the Louisiana Purchase, the West pretty much was defined of the country from the west of the Appalachians to the Mississippi River. That was the West.
Where is West compared to East?
Left.
Anywhere in like the West in general, it's like you go, you can probably guarantee like there's going to be a lake somewhere. And wildlife, there's deer, wolves, foxes. Around here, if you want to go farther west into the states like Wyoming or Nebraska, you might get bison, moose, elks, really big animals.
Okay, I would define the West as cowboys, a direction. Cowboys, a direction. What else?
What direction?
West.
What direction?
West.
West usually means anything basically if I'm facing north to my left. It's where young men go, at least that's what I was told.
As I think about it, then I think about, you know, the way we talk about the East and the West, and you know, Asia being in the East and the U.S. being in the West. So I guess I think about it geographically. I mean,
Isn't Asia west of the United States?
That is an interesting twist. but it is considered the East. And,
why is that?
but you go west to get there. I guess it's where the starting point is.
The West. Well, if you're looking at a globe, it's to the left. Frontier land, lots of cactus. Or a place where people could make kind of their future happen.
Okay, Aunt Theo, how do you define the West?
Okay, I'm thinking of West Manson, which is also known as Sweet Hill, where I was born and raised, along with all my brothers and sisters. We really weren't on a hill. It was more like a slope, but they always called it Sweet Hill.
The West is wide open spaces. It is huge landscapes. The West is freedom of expression. The West is freedom from government or society interference in your lifestyle.
Where do you live?
Fairbanks, Alaska. I love the wilderness. I love the West.
The thing I would say is I think of West, the West coast, and the stereotypes I would imagine when you say west, or the west coast, would be, you know, sunny beaches of California, the nice weather, the laid-back attitude, that type of thing. And then when you look at it at the historical perspective, I would just say the pioneers, they traveled westward until they couldn't anymore. And that term was manifest destiny, something you learn in history class growing up.
The West was a movement of the population from land that was not necessarily overused, but that was populated, and the opportunity was not, or the dream. Sometimes it was just a dream. It's not there.
West.